Hello, for 30cc, I'm Heather Schaffenbill. We are at the Lutheran Church of Peace in Platteville, and joining us today is singer-songwriter Sarah Kelly. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, no problem.
Your current project is called Born to Worship. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, these are all songs that I wrote when I was 7 and 8 years old. I had just come out of a really heavy season in my life, and I needed to remember what I was born and created to do. As a songwriter, you know, Paul's rules still apply. Like he says to take your thoughts captive, and I needed to, because I had been through some why God moments, and maybe if I was allowing myself, could have gotten some bitterness in my heart at that point. But instead of that, I chose to go back to the songs that I wrote when I was young, and that's why I named it Born to Worship, just to remind myself of who I am, what I'm created to do, who I was before. I've had several abusive situations in my past. Before those, you know, finally breaking that addiction in my own life 3 years ago and walking out of it completely. It's a hard thing to do. Any girl who's been there knows it's a hard thing. That's why women stay. But to move completely past that and not allow myself to get bitter or hateful or full of resentment, because a lot of my abuse did happen within the church. So I didn't want that to affect my view of God. So I went back to the purest, most precious songs that I have to remind me of who he really is without all of that other junk. And it worked. I am doing better in my spiritual life than ever. And those are my favorites anyways. Those were the ones that I would sing when I was by myself at my piano. You know, the ones I'm Born to Worship, I think they're some of my most precious songs for me too.
You've also released a concert DVD. What was one of the highlights for you for that DVD?
Okay, loved the show. I've been doing a lot in Europe, a lot of time over there. I've pretty much been full-time touring in Europe for the last 2-3 years, okay? And things have been a little bit of a wildfire, both in the mainstream and the Christian world. I mean, you have to understand that Europe is 2% Christian, so it's not like it is here. It's, if you put on a Christian show, there'd be 2 people, you know, and they'd be 80 in the front row with their lighters, okay? So, I mean, it's just not going to be like that. You have to be more of a mainstream-hearted artist, and you better be able to back it up musically. You better not be half good and half not good. You better be ready to back it up musically with your band and what you have. It's been a great challenge. Loved it. Love the audiences. They like it very, very honest. It was very healing for me. I've seen a lot of people get saved. That's been the highlight. And at that show in particular, there was one point where I was scared to death, because when you're standing up in front of a bunch of people that you don't know what they're going to do when you start to talk about Jesus, you think about not talking about Jesus. Okay? You do. You think about just singing your songs and getting off the stage, because you're not sure what they're going to do. You're not sure if they're going to like you or hate you or start throwing things or booing, and that's a hard place to be as one little person. You know, to put yourself in that situation in a non-Christian environment in Amsterdam. And I'll never forget this. On this DVD even, I share my faith. I'm like, okay, Sarah, this is why you're here. You've got to do this. You know, come on, do it. And they busted out in a cheer. And there was a few of them that were just like, yeah. They were with me all the way. And then all of them could respect in me the fact that I just stood up for my faith. And that was huge to me. That was huge. And it also told me that people are more ready for God than we think. Way more open to faith. And as long as you're honest about it and don't pretend like you know everything, they're cool with it. You know? So that's my favorite part of the DVD.
You categorize your music as worship evangelism. Could you explain what you mean by that?
Exactly what I just said. It seems like the people that are drawn to my music, it's changing a little bit now, because I'm doing a lot of worship with that whole Born to Worship and doing, but especially my older stuff, which is a whole year old, you know, so old. But a lot of that stuff, it appeals to people who have been through why God moments, hard times, maybe even a little edge of bitterness creeping in their lives and kind of stuff. A lot of them aren't saved. So that brings an interesting opportunity to me to be singing in front of a lot of non-Christians as a worshiper, you know? So at that point, do I just rattle off my songs or do I go into worship? And let me tell you, I go into worship every time. It's my favorite part. So I'm a worshiper first. You know, that's what I was born to do, and I do believe that. You know, just like the name of my most recent album, Born to Worship, you know. So yeah, I think that there's nothing that we can't talk people into following Christ. I think anybody who tries that is just a really bad salesman and needs to fall off their high horse. But you know, I do think that the presence of God is convincing. You know, people, I don't do this to see more notches on my belt, to see people get saved in that way. I do it because people are hurting and they need someone and they need to know they're not alone. And there's nothing like the presence of God that can prove that to someone. So yeah, I do worship and I do rock and roll. So that makes me a worship evangelist.
Okay. We're going to play your song At About Midnight. Would you share with us the meaning of that song?
Okay, I love this song. Although every time I sing it, it does cost me something because it brings me back to some really hard times in my life. I wrote this song in the middle of the why God moment, of all why God moments so far in my life. And just Paul and Silas were my mentors through this. So, you know, they were, Acts 16:25 said that at about midnight, Paul and Silas prayed and sang hymns to God, and the other prisoners were watching them. And then all at once, all of their chains fell off. And even though I get in front of these audiences and sing and worship, even though it felt like sometimes my life was falling apart, and I was like, God, am I being a hypocrite right now? No. I'm worshiping in the center of my circumstance like Paul and Silas did. And not only I will walk away free, but they will as well, if I'm willing to be honest and worship you in spirit and truth in the center of the circumstance. So that song was me kind of trying to guess what that song in that prison. I mean, basically, the song is just my attempt at guessing what Paul and Silas's song in that jail would have sounded like. And it was my attempt at getting me to sing the same thing in the middle of a why God moment. Like, even though I don't understand what's going on right now, at about midnight, I'll call out your name. And I'll find contentment singing your praise. You know? So, I mean, that's... you know, some people think it's a little melancholy. A lot of Christian music, there's never a minor chord, you know. It's a extremely real song that deals with some of the why God moments that happen to us Christians too.